I'm Jarrod Fry, General Manager of Medina TV, and I want to welcome you to our Candidates Forums. We partner with the Greater Medina Chamber of Commerce to bring you these Candidates Forums to give you the most information possible to make you the most informed voter as you head to the polls this November. All candidates were offered invitations to take part in the races that we're going to televise here on Medina TV. So the candidates you see are the ones that responded to those invitations. We hope you sit back and enjoy our Candidates Forums and look forward to seeing you at the polls this November. Hello, joining me in studio now is Councilman for Ward 1, Brian Hilberg, who's running this November as the incumbent, looking to retain his seat on the Ward 1 Council. Welcome, and thank you for coming in today.
Thank you, Jarrod. Thanks for having me.
And why don't you take a few seconds just to tell the voters a little bit about yourself and what you do there for Ward 1.
I've lived in Medina County most of my life. Moved out of the city for a little short while, out of the state for a short while, always came back. Always considered Medina to be my home. We moved into Ward 1 9 years ago. Started a business here on the square 12 years ago, almost 13 years ago. I have two twin daughters, 6-year-old Isabel and Sophia. My wife Mary, who I've been married to for 15 years. I've been on city council for 5 years now. I was appointed, actually I can't think of the year, 2012 it would be. And then ran for re-election in 2013, and here we are today.
And also, as you mentioned, a business owner on the square as well?
Correct.
And so a good background living here and also being part of the business that is around the square. Do you feel that helps aid you in being a better representative in Ward 1?
I think so. In Ward 1 and in the city as a whole. I've got 13 years of, almost 13 years of small business experience. Prior to that, I had 12 years of corporate management experience. And in between there, I had a few years of senior management experience with a multi-million-dollar regional company in Maryland. So I think all of that combined, you mix that with modest middle income raising, I think it helps me relate very well to the diverse population that we have in Ward 1. Mm-hmm. You can go from low to moderate income families all the way up to wealthy upper class families. Mm-hmm. So I think all of that combined helps me to relate well with our residents.
And what is it about Ward 1 and I guess the council position itself what made you decide to run again?
Well, like I said, I grew up in Medina County, lived in the city for the last 9 years, had my business here for 13 years. I just felt it was time to give back to the community. And I know that's kind of everybody says that, but I truly felt like I wanted to give back. A lot of the residents of the city have supported my business for 13 years, and what better way to give back than get involved in city government and some of the other organizations around town that I belong to.
I know you just kind of touched on that in a couple of these other questions I've asked, but what do you think is the skill set or things that kind of separate you apart maybe from your opponents in this race?
Small business helps. And then, like I said, working in corporate management, senior management with a multi-million-dollar company, very budget-driven. That helps a lot, especially in today's world. Our funding is being cut. We don't have as much income coming in as we used to, and we've had to struggle to find ways to live within our means. And so I think having that budget experience in the past has helped me tremendously.
And what would you say are some of your top priorities in the forefront right now for Ward 1?
Well, talking about the budgets, obviously our funding is cut, so we're forced to find ways to increase our tax base. Part of that is being creative in economic development. How do we bring more businesses to town? How do we attract businesses? How do we retain businesses? Which is probably the easier route to go is to retain. It's easier to retain a company than it is to attract a new one. And I think we're on the right track. I believe the number is $36 million in investment in the last, just in 2016 alone. That's what's been generating new investments in the city. When you couple that with $16 million in capital improvements over the last 10 years, you really start to make Medina very attractive to new business, and you really start to give existing businesses a reason to want to stay here. So,
and you brought up the economic development, and that's always a hot button issue at times, as we've had discussion about the second parking deck that they're looking at, and also some business development or economic development in that area. How important do you feel that is for the city of Medina?
Well, extremely important. Like I said, our funding's cut. We need to try to find ways to bring that revenue up. We are essentially built out residentially, so we need to look at our business base. One of the things we need to look at, like I said, is we have to think outside the box. What can we do with what we currently have, and change that? And one of the things we're looking at is this parking deck, and a lot of people want to know why. But a lot of us feel that if we can come up with the parking, that will spur the economic development on the west side of the square that we're looking at, between Liberty and Washington Street. It could be a mix of hotel, commercial, retail, but that's not going to come unless we have the parking. Parking is the most expensive part for a developer, and they don't want to pay for the parking if they don't have to. So we feel, especially with the current offer of $1 million on the table from the state, it's just prudent of us to take advantage of that.
Oh, absolutely. And now you talked about the economic side of that, and you look at the fiscal forecast moving forward for the city. How has it helped the city having that 5-year budgetary outlook, being able to look out 5 years ahead? As a member of council, has there been pros and cons to having that 5-year budget?
Well, the only con I can think to having it is we know what's coming. But, I mean, there's definitely pros to it. I mean, I think if you look at other cities, a lot of cities are starting to do this now. Medina's been doing it for years. Businesses do it for, I did it in corporate world for years. You need to understand where you're going to be 5 years, even 10 years down the road, and you can't do that unless you start to do these projections. So yeah, it's extremely important.
Yeah, and now also, as you talk about importance, how do you determine that balance between your representation of your Ward 1 residents, the constituents you serve, but also when it comes to the city as a whole? Because not only are there times where you got to try to look out for Ward 1 as a councilman, but you're making decisions as a group of 7 in terms of the city as a whole.
You're correct. My main focus is Ward 1, but the decisions that are made for the city as a whole can directly affect Ward 1. And there's times when people say that Ward 2 or Ward 3 or Ward 4 is getting more money than Ward 1 is. If you go back and look at the history, it's fairly even. Some years Ward 1 gets more money invested into it. Other years it's some of the other wards. But as a whole, we want our city to succeed. We want it to be a destination place to live. So the decisions that we make as a whole for the city directly affect each of the wards, not just Ward 1.
And then I guess as you look ahead, focusing just on Ward 1, as you look ahead in the next 5 years and looking ahead as they look at these plans, what are some goals that you would like to see accomplished in Ward 1?
There's a couple things that I'm working on right now. Ward 1 has some of the older housing stock. I'm currently working on a plan that it would be more of a public-private partnership that will basically it's a West Side neighborhood improvement initiative that will allow us to look at some of the older housing stock, especially ones that have zoning code violations. We'll go in there, work with the homeowner, find out what needs to be done to bring it up to code, and use this private-public partnership to make those repairs. Like I said, the funding is being cut. As a city, we don't have money to put into residential housing stock, so we're forced to look elsewhere. So I want to start to improve the appearance of these residences and then return them to fair market value.
That's a great plan, and that's definitely something. It seems like it's a cycle all around for all cities or school districts. Whoever relies on taxpayer dollars, is that fluctuation of income coming in and out. And I think that's. Would you say that's probably, as you look at the state of the city and everything going on, probably maybe the top priority in terms of what you're facing in the years to come?
One of the top ones, yes. I mean, we've been looking at it for the last few years now. We know it's coming. It has happened. We know it's going to continue. But having that 5-year projection allows us to see beyond this year or next year. It allows us to see what the trends are over the next couple of years so that we can start to address those right now and not wait till that 5th year. Yeah. It really helps us out.
And I'm sure helps gauge what you have to do in regards to if you ever have to go back to the taxpayers or anything in that regard. I know you've taken a lot of time here and answered a lot of great questions for me. I appreciate that, but I wanted to give you the opportunity for you to speak to the voters about anything you'd like to here at the end to wrap things up. So I will turn it over to you and let you give your closing comments.
Thank you. As I said, I've been councilman for Ward 1 for the last 5 years. Been a part of a successful city council and administration that has worked within a reasonable and balanced budget and helped direct the success of the city for the last 5 years. And I'm asking for your vote in November to continue that trend. Thank you.
And again, that's Brian Hilberg, our Ward 1 council member right now. And best of luck to you this November. I appreciate your time here today, Brian.
Thank you, Jarrod.
Thank you. Hello, and joining me in studio now is Laura Parnell, a candidate for Ward 1 council seat. And thank you for joining us here today.
Thank you for having me.
Why don't you first start off and just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, the basics are I've lived in Medina for 17 years, in Ward 1 for the last 7. I'm the owner of Cool Beans Cafe up on the square, so obviously involved in this community as it is. I have 2 kids that have actually graduated from Medina City Schools and moved away, and that's about it for me.
Okay. Now, what drew you to want to run for the City Council Ward 1?
Well, the reason that I wanted to do this is I felt that there was a need. I've never set my sights on being a career politician or anything like that, but I always do step up when I feel that there's something that's lacking and a need needs to be filled. And I felt that that was going on in our ward and in my community. And so I've thrown my hat in to see what I can do to help better the neighborhood.
Okay. And then why don't you, for the voters and viewers at home, maybe explain a little bit about what being a city council person for a ward as well as the city council seat as a whole.
Well, the city council, the ward there's 4 specific wards. It splits up our community so that we have a different voice for different areas. Ward 1 is an area with older homes, some low-income areas, so it has its unique challenges. And then you have 2 seats as well that take over the entire thing. I am interested in running for my ward simply because I feel the area that I live in is the one that truly needs some guidance and assistance.
And what do you think, what skills or expertise do you feel like you can bring to that position?
I think communication is the biggest one that we're lacking right now. When it comes to communication, that's something that I do very well. I'm responsive and organized and all the other things that I feel would really help with the issues that we're facing.
And as you look at that, I know you're discussing trying to look out for the best for Ward 1, which is great as every council member, but unfortunately you've also got, as you mentioned, the 4 other wards and the 2 at large.
Yes.
How do you play that balance of looking out for Ward 1 and also looking out for the city as a whole?
Well, looking out for the city as a whole, I think right now I'm already involved in a lot of things that are not specifically in my neighborhood and in my area. Being a business owner on the square, obviously that is a different ward, but it is something that I truly look out for and want to see continue to thrive. And the Medina community overall is something that I think I can definitely work on and help bring some needed change in the area.
And you mentioned you want to see the city thrive, and one of the major things that they're looking at right now is, with being, for the most part, built out, looking at different and creative ways in which to continue to grow the city. And I know one of the big topics of conversation has been the parking deck, putting that in, and hopefully that would lead to further development. What are your thoughts on that situation?
Well, the parking deck, I love the fact that they incorporated some storefronts into there and some apartments as well. I think that that is going to be a huge draw. A lot of the living spaces that are in the square have been converted to offices, so we've lost that. And with the square as healthy as it is, there's a lot of people who want to be right there within walking distance. And the younger generations, that's what they want. They want to be somewhere that's local so that they can literally walk outside their door and have everything at their fingertips. So the fact that they've put that in, I think is a great thing for downtown. As a business owner, I know that that's one of the complaints that I get a lot, is there's never any parking anywhere. So I think it's just only going to help make the square better.
And now the city operates on a 5-year budget. They'll kind of do a look ahead in terms of 5 years. What do you think are the challenges or the important things as the city looks ahead in that 5-year forecast?
In the 5-year forecast, I think a lot of what needs to happen is a lot of infrastructure, and I know that we're currently working on those things right now with street replacements and sidewalk replacements and things like that. I think that is a huge area that we need to look at. Some of the empty storefronts that we have, the Kmart Plaza being one of them. That one's just very obvious. You know, we have some other areas that need some help and some investment, but some get more attention just because they are so noticeable to everybody who drives through town.
Right.
So.
And I guess as you go to look and accomplish those goals of expansion and looking at different facilities, may not always be in agreement with some of the other members of council. How do you feel you handle situations where maybe you might have times where people aren't going to see eye to eye as members of council? Conflict
is not something that I'm unused to. I run a business where I work with people on a daily basis, and it's all customer driven. So obviously you have your issues, and you can handle them as best as possible. Sometimes you won't agree, and that's okay. That's why there's a council, and whoever the majority is, that's obviously what we feel is in the best interest of the community, and that's what we'll go for. But it will happen.
Now, what makes you feel like you're the best qualified candidate for the position? Is there anything you feel that really sets you apart from the other candidates?
I think a lot of things, being a business owner, being involved in the community, and speaking to a lot of the community members, one of the things that I bring to the table that I feel, like I said, we were lacking is basic communication. When it comes to hearing the constituents' issues and being in communication and then standing up for those constituents when there is an issue, that is something that I'm very good at, and I think that is what I can definitely bring to the community. There's been a few large issues just recently that residents did not feel like they were paid attention to, and that anyone went to bat for them. And that is something that I think is one of my biggest one of my biggest strengths.
Okay. And in terms of that communication, how do you feel is the best way? Because sometimes you're talking a large amount of people trying to get information out to.
Absolutely.
What ideas do you have for that?
I actually have handwritten notes and sent them out to potential voters in our area. And one of the things that I felt was very important is I put my personal cell phone number in there. Obviously, I'm accessible at the store, but email, phone number, I'm accessible. I think it'd be a good thing to continue to do some community events as well in order to just get people out there, and a lot of times people won't reach out if they have what they feel is a small issue, but if you're just having a conversation like we are, it's something that pops up, and then you can become aware of it if you weren't before.
Sure. And then as you look ahead, the city, as they've looked at this 5-year plan, as we discussed earlier, is looking at maybe some financial difficulties, which is par for the course for almost any government that you look at now, depending on what happens on the federal level. What do you feel the city should be doing as we look ahead, and if the numbers get tighter or we're looking at financial difficulties in the year 4 or 5 of this 5-year plan, what do you kind of see as your role, if elected, you would play?
Well, the obvious one is you start looking at what you can cut. I mean, as a business owner, I deal with financials all the time too, and I've had my lean years as well as my good years. So, making those tough adjustments is something that you obviously have to do. But looking at the budget, there's some areas, we're a very fortunate community with some of the things that we can offer here. But unfortunately, in a tough situation, sometimes those are the things that need to be looked at.
Sure. So one of the big keys, we talk about City Council as a whole having to look at their 5-year plan and forecast things out. But as running for this Ward 1 council seat, what do you see as your most important goals in the immediate future for Ward 1, and then also as you look ahead 5 years?
Well, I think the immediate goals that I have are, speaking with some of the constituents, we need to work on being good neighbors with some of our industrial communities or businesses that we have. Noise ordinances and things like that I think need to definitely be enforced. Also going forward, we have a large stock of older homes, which are a challenge to keep up, but they're in good proximity to the square, so their home values are rising and becoming more desirable. I feel like that's something that we need to definitely work on, is that area and keeping that area vibrant.
You mentioned you as being a business owner in Medina, how would you recommend the balance is played out between, as a council member and City Council who looks to bring in business, maintain businesses, keep them in line with either regulations, what have you? It's a tough balance. How would you see that, both from a business standpoint and maybe as a council person? How would you balance that?
Well, as a business person, I think that it is a good thing to have incentives, tax incentives, to bring companies into town. We're doing very well at that, I believe. We've got a lot of businesses that are expanding in town, which I think just shows that that's a good partnership that we have. As a resident, I feel that the same thing. But I also feel that the businesses that we bring to town or that we have in town should definitely be good neighbors, and work with the community as a whole in order to maintain that good relationship.
Well, great. I want to thank you definitely for taking the time to answer some of these questions. I appreciate the honesty and then the effort that you made here today to come in here. We appreciate that for all candidates. But this is your chance and your opportunity to address the voters with one last time with anything I may not have been able to bring up that you might want to bring up. So feel free to take over and speak to the viewers.
All right, sounds good. I am Laura Parnell, and I do hope that you will vote for me. I will be your voice for Ward 1, something I feel we're lacking, and I would love to fill that opportunity for you. Thank you.
That's Laura Parnell, candidate for Ward 1 of City Council. And I appreciate your time here today, and best of luck to you this November.
Thank you.
Thank you.